trying to work in our yard. It's modified so that the exhaust system is not manufactured exhaust system. He modifies it, adds pipes, and makes it excessively noisy. It goes above the 95 decibel level that it was in the noise ordinance. And we're constantly dealing with this happening hours on end, almost on a daily basis. It's obnoxious, it's annoying, it's harassing. He's caused property damage. He kicks at our fence, at our property markers, at our trees. It's just a continuous thing, and you can't even enjoy your own yard. There's no reason for anybody to use it in a manner that abuses anyone or harasses someone. That's not enjoying a recreational vehicle. That's not using it for your pleasure. That's using it to create harassing stress for other people, and there's no reason for that. And this amendment, the way it's written, will not prevent anybody from using their vehicle, but it will prevent abuse of others with those vehicles. And that's what we're asking that you pass today. And I also have a video showing some of the actions that we're dealing with. And if anybody would like to see it, I can show it to you. If we could play it on a projector, that would work as well.
Tracy, would you please explain that you were involved in the discussions concerning this?
Yes, I participated on the ATV committee, so I was involved in the discussions, and I think what we put together is fair, it's reasonable, it's not preventing anyone from enjoying them. People have to remember that we are not in the country, that these are half-acre yards, and they're not meant for them to be racetracks. I've seen aerial photos of someone's house where she has teenagers at the next door property running around, and you can see the tracks that they've worn in the yard from an aerial view. And she listens to 4 to 6 vehicles running all the time. There's no reason for that. If you want to really enjoy your vehicle, you need to go out somewhere where you can actually get on a track and use it and get out there and enjoy it without running in a tiny little circle or up and down a property line just to aggravate other people. There's no reason for that.
All right, thank you, Tracy. Are there any other comments this evening? Yes, ma'am.
Yes, good evening. Marie Washington, 9176 Cherokee Run. I am Tracy's neighbor. I'm the person, and my son are the people that she's complaining about here. It's because of them that this ordinance first came to you. My son has not ridden his ATV in over a year, and I believe you're aware of that. It has been tested by the Macedonia Police Department. It is not over the decibel mark that you have mentioned. My son does not damage their fence or their property line. He does not kick up anything, and he hasn't since you put up the fence and the bushes. You can go ahead and show me any tape you like, but it's going to be an old tape. It's not going to be anything current. And what we're talking about here is a current issue, not a past issue. Your hatred for my family is not going to get this ordinance to pass properly. You need to put those issues aside and think about everybody else, not just you and your family. Getting to the ordinance, what I'd like to know is how do you plan on enforcing the time limit of 1 hour?
Chief's behind you.
I believe we're going to have the person call us when it started, or we can go out.
What person?
Whoever has an issue with it. So in other words, if your neighbor has an issue with your son riding his whatever, she can call, an officer can go by and say at such and such a time, he was riding the thingamabob. I think you had a little tractor, I think is. If he goes by an hour later and he's still riding, it's over an hour.
Well, this doesn't talk about tractors. Did you say tractor?
There's legally it's included in this ordinance.
Where is that included?
Oh, I'd have to read the whole ordinance,
The
but
tractor that my son rides is actually a riding mower that he converted
right, a
into.
race tractor.
Yeah, but it's like nothing like an ATV machine.
I'm not going
At
to
all.
debate that with you. No,
Okay.
it's not.
So Bill and Tracy could call you guys at any given time and say, Sean is outside riding his tractor, and an officer will come to my house
Under this ordinance,
Yes.
an officer will drive by.
Okay, and then what? Let's say he's riding 70 minutes, then what happens?
Well, if the officer then comes by an hour later and he's still riding, you'd be in violation
Okay.
of this ordinance.
Of this ordinance. So is the word tractor going to be included in this ordinance?
Tractor's not going to be included in the ordinance. I believe that we asked the law department to include tractor type vehicles, race tractors, I think is what I sent an email to them or a phone call I had with them or whatever.
Okay.
And they indicated that it was 8B, thank you. Snowmobiles, off-road motorcycles, racing tractors, in parentheses, a lawnmower with a modified engine and/or mowing deck removed, and all-purpose vehicles, parentheses, ATVs, may be operated, yada, yada, yada.
Okay.
So it is included in, it's under 8B.
Okay.
Okay.
Thank you. Thank you, that's all I have.
All right,
Chief Golden, you were involved in both the original legislation and now also the amended, is that correct?
Yeah, Dave, we've had a lot of,
I know you have.
yeah.
I just want to make sure, because you are always concerned about enforcement, I understand, that's your job.
Mhm.
You're satisfied that or are you satisfied, would be a better way to put it, with the ordinance as amended as to its enforceability as a police officer?
Yeah, I believe we can enforce this, yes.
That's all I had for you. Thank you.
I have a question for you, John. What if, I believe it says like you have to get a permit, $5 permit if you have one of these, and they're gonna use it. Shouldn't it be them, whoever got the permit, that when they're getting ready to ride this, wouldn't it make sense for them to call the police department and say, you know, my name is so-so, I have a permit to ride this, it's such and such time and date, I'm getting ready to get on my ATV or my mini bike or whatever it is, and why should it be the neighbor?
I suppose you could do it that way. That would be your choice. We talked about having, I think, specific times. We talked about maybe we could break it up into half-an-hour periods, and then if you wanted to break it up into half-an-hour periods, they would have to actually indicate on the permit their times, and some folks thought that that might be a little too,
Well, it makes more sense because that's where the issue, where neighbors are not are fighting with each other, it causes problems. Whoever is issued the permit to should be the one to call the police department and say, I'm getting ready to ride my ATV today. Because it shouldn't be the neighbor, because then it's gonna say, you called the police on me, you know? It's gonna turn into an arguing match again. It's like, and that's not our problem.
I don't disagree.
It's a nuisance problem, and to me, I think the police need to enforce the nuisance law. It's my opinion.
the idea of the permit is to make sure that the people understand the rules. The vehicle will be checked if it has the proper exhaust. You can't be running something that is very, very loud exhaust, racing mufflers, so forth. As far as times, you can give us approximate times of what time you are going to be riding at the time you purchase the permit. It's noted on the permit. If for some reason you can't ride it at that time, but you can ride it later, you can always call in. We're very, very flexible. If there never is a complaint about a person that buys one of these vehicles and gets a permit, they'll never see us, all right? But if there are complaints, well, then we will be watching closer. I don't know if that explains it. Yes.
Mayor, I live next to people that complain about everything. It doesn't matter what we do. So this, I think what you're trying to do here is a good thing. I'm very happy with the modifications that were made on here. I can't wait for my son to get his ATV up and running again so he can start enjoying it again. But when you live next to people that complain about every little thing that you do, it doesn't matter what it is, then Rita, I don't know if there's a nuisance thing there because I live next door to people that are a nuisance, okay? And, yeah, it would be easy to just pick up and move, but not everybody can afford to do that.
Well, Marie, you're correct, but let me point this out to you. that we are dealing with dozens of complaints, not just one. So we're trying to do something broad enough to cover all of those,
And I
not
understand
just
that.
yours, okay?
Thank you.
Okay. Are there any other comments this evening regarding this subject? Yes. Dave. Next.
Oh, I can see them.
That's all right, it's behind you, you can't.
Dave Lacey, 8598 North Bedford Road. I was part of the ATV committee that helps with the amendment. I feel that this should be, amended in tonight. Basic reasons are, you have a group of people that are racing around a house on a half-acre lot. That's very dangerous. There's liability risks there. There's no helmets. I've seen it, I drove by. It's any parent that would put their kid on a motorized vehicle without a helmet is just asking for an incident to happen, especially on a half-acre lot. So with this ordinance, it limits the bikes to just one for 2 acres or less. That alleviates a lot of the risk, and it would alleviate a lot of the problems with the neighbors with the 6, 7 bikes running for 3, 4, 5 hours. I don't want to hear that. My son is very respectful to the neighbors. He only rides it 20, 30 minutes at a time, shuts it off, goes in, does whatever else he has to do, rides another half hour. That's where I came up with the idea of log your time that you're gonna ride. So, and there is a neighbor that has a little racing bike now that's running up and down the street, which is kind of ridiculous. But without the muffler on there, it's obnoxious. So I can understand where the people that have the complaints against these are coming from. And I think that this should be tried. At least give it a trial period.
Dave, I have a question. You said the little motorbike rides up and down the street. Don't you have to have a plate on it now?
Uh-huh.
If it does
Right.
does it have a
lights,
plate?
And it doesn't.
Okay, I mean, that's something that the police should just enforce anyhow.
Right.
Somebody should call and say, hey,
But-
because it's on the street. I heard.
Well, yeah, it's running up and down North Bedford. I mean,
That's what I'm saying. It's a police problem.
Right.
It's not.
That is, but I understand what you're saying too, because nobody wants to lose their rights to have the recreational vehicles. But the problem is, you're not gonna have to where every neighbor's gonna be respectful
Yes.
to their other neighbor, and that's the problem here. It's not about my son being white, because, no, first of all, I'm a parent, he's not gonna disrespect my neighbors.
Right.
He's not gonna do the things that I've heard that have been happening in Macedonia.
Right.
He's got to respect his neighbors. He has to work hard to get the privileges that he does earn to do. It's just not a free-for-all. And a lot of this is free-for-all stuff. And half-acre lots with 6 ATVs,
Right.
that's a lot. I mean, you should go somewhere and ride those. And that becomes a dirt bike track, basically. I mean, you're gonna get trail marks no matter if it's just you riding or if you have you and your brother riding, but 6 of them. That's why I got involved in this, because I
Right.
don't want my son to lose his rights, but then I don't want to see neighbors having to suffer for disrespect.
Dave's son is an interesting concept because Dave's son got his bike as a reward for getting good grades.
How many
Dave's
acres
son
do you
earned the money.
How many acres do you have?
Over an acre.
Okay, so you have over an acre?
Yeah, so I mean, he has plenty of room
Right.
to ride.
I just thought I'd ask that.
Yeah, and I mean, no, that's fine. I mean, so you can see I'm not trying to be, one-sided towards this,
Right.
but, he worked hard through school, he saved his money, he had to pay for part of that bike. It wasn't just, I go buy you a bike, you
Right.
earn it. And that's the way all the extra stuff he gets in the house is, he has to earn it. So when I seen the ordinance, I was like, well, that's not fair to you. You worked really hard for 3 years, and now because some people can't respect one another, you lose. That's not
Right.
fair.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Are there any
Thanks,
more
Dave.
comments? Yes, sir.
I live on South Skyline Drive. All our properties are about an acre apiece. I have 2 little girls that ride an ATV. It's a 50cc. I assure you, if it were parked outside the door here, you would not be able to hear it running. So noise issue, it is not. For a couple of complaints, and I don't know if these 12 complaints that you've had, Are they all different neighborhoods, all different residents, or is this 12 complaints from 2 different households?
12 was an example number.
Okay.
Over the years,
They're from all over.
a lot.
They're
Okay.
they're
They're
not,
from all
you know,
over.
one family, they're from all over.
Okay.
Could you state your name, please?
My name is Greg Gamula.
All right.
But I'm definitely against the ordinance and law. I don't feel that a few issues should punish other kids who are not causing any problem. You know, our yard is not tore up, there are no bare spots. One of the problems I have with the current ordinance is it says an hour time slot. My kids may ride 2 or 3 hours in a day, and that's probably only once every maybe 3 weeks. So how that can become a nuisance, I don't know how. And I've even talked to neighbors, no one has an issue with it. And if they did, we would simply stop. So for, you know, a couple people to have personal issues, I think it's wrong to try and pass a law that would potentially affect a lot of these little kids who do want to enjoy something like this. So, and another thing, Rita, you had mentioned about having the permit holder call in. I would have to disagree with that, because now you're taking in a bunch of calls, and what if the kid does go ride for 5 minutes and, you know, something come up and they go back out and ride later? Now they just lost out in their time slot.
Right. Well,
If there's a problem with the particular residents, if they were called and complained upon, that would make more sense. You don't have all these calls coming in, and you know what, you deal with the problem that, you know, and the people that are causing a problem, not punish everybody.
Right. Well, Greg, in the ordinance, you have to get a permit. It's like $5 or something for this permit. And
Right.
so, you know, how do the police, like, you know, like Marie asked, how do the police even know when that person's going to be riding?
Well, as
It just doesn't make sense to me. So-
as the chief said, if somebody had called in and complained, the time is noted, you know, and obviously those are, the people who are gonna complain are the ones that are causing the problem. So you may have an officer taking time out of what he, you know, should be enforcing somewhere else.
He's going to have to anyhow to go find out how long they're riding their ATV.
Well,
That's the way I
right,
look
but
at
he'll be going out after one complaint, not after 10 people that called in and said, hey, I'm gonna go ride today. So it just doesn't make sense. I mean, the time slot doesn't make sense. Other than, you know, if it weren't for the time slot and the amount of time, I probably wouldn't mind it. But the way it is right now,
Just,
I mean, the issue of telling you what you can and can't do on your own property that's an issue in itself.
Well, of course, we do have zoning that tells you what you can and can't do. Could I ask you, this 50 cc sounds like that wouldn't even be a problem from what I read. That would
It's
not be
real
an
small.
issue, because I think it was competition level vehicles.
But the ordinance, it specifies all ATVs.
Yes, but, I know it does, but but what it's saying is that, you know, if you can't ride competition level vehicles, but I don't think that it says anything about the 50 cc can't be used, does it? No, I don't see that.
It does say all ATVs, off-road.
Yes, it
vehicles.
does affect all of them, I agree.
Right.
But what is being prohibited, for example, are these competition level, very loud vehicles. Then you can ride, in other words, a 50 cc vehicle, you could be riding, and you would not be automatically in violation of anything.
No, that's incorrect. No, I believe it does incorporate all ATVs.
It does.
And what I think you're referring to is if you have a competition ATV,
Yeah.
you can't ride it at all.
That's correct. What
And
I'm
I believe his smaller ATV would fall under the umbrella of the
Of just an
ordinance.
ATV, but it wouldn't be
Yes.
prohibited, is
It
what
would
I'm
be,
saying.
yes.
It would be prohibited from being used where?
No, it would fall under the umbrella of the ordinance for
It
for
does.
1 hour operation, yes.
Correct, that is true,
Yes.
yes. I'm just saying that the noise level that he mentioned, the 50 cc type of vehicle would not be something prohibited.
We have noise ordinances that would have covered anything that's higher. There are some motorcycles that are in our neighborhoods that are a little louder than our noise ordinance, but they aren't constant unless they're working on them.
Right.
So, you know, you would have fallen into a noise ordinance outside, even if we didn't adopt this, they could complain on noise ordinance if you were in violation of that. We used to have a company on the corner of Valley View and Highland that we constantly had noise complaints. It was the company itself. The question I would have is, you're stating 1 hour a day isn't enough. Would 2 hours a day be enough? I agree, 1 hour a day. What if I have 2 ATVs? Do I get 2 hours, or do I get 1 hour for each ATV, or do I get 1 hour period for both? I have 2 kids.
I
What if one's
believe-
home and the other one's not?
I believe as we discussed, it would be 1 permit per yard. So if you had 2 kids, you would only have to purchase 1 permit for them, and then you would get 1 hour for both of those.
So that
Not-
answers my
Not
other
one
question.
separate hour for each, it would be 1 hour.
Yeah, my other question, is it a permit per ATV or per household? What if I have 2 kids and they each have their own ATV? You're saying I
per
get 1
yard.
permit and they both can only ride within 1 hour in the same time. If you're not home, tough luck.
Yes.
John,
That's pretty prohibitive for someone who I'm trying to reward.
what do they get charged with if you break the law?
I'd have to, I think they get warned a couple times, they get their permit revoked, and then,
It just says 1 permit, but it doesn't give the specification if it's per household or per ATV.
I believe it was per yard, per piece of
Yeah,
property.
and then when we get into 2 acres or more, I can have 2 off-road vehicles. It doesn't say I can only drive them each for 1 hour, or do I get 1 hour to ride both of them within? I mean, there's some,
Well, that would have to be a
various-
revision that the
yeah,
law
some of
department
this
could
is still
tweak, I
open
guess.
for interpretation that would lead us to be hard to enforce, because we haven't tightened up some of this language. I'm not in agreement that if I have two kids and I get 1 hour a day and one of them's working,
God bless you.
or after school and sports and then comes home, can't do it because the other one was home already, that's kind of difficult. And 1 permit per household, I think we need to look at some of this.
To answer your question, Rita,
Oh, yeah, okay, one
it
is
says
warned.
under F, 12F, it says whoever violates this section shall be guilty of a misdemeanor upon the first conviction and a first offense and a misdemeanor, 4th degree for each subsequent offense. And I believe built in here is you give them a warning, and, you know, it's not,
Who gets the warning, the child or the parent?
be the parent. I don't believe a child can get a permit. You would have to be at least 18 to get a
They're
permit.
the ones driving it.
They don't.
Yeah, but you would figure the adult would have to be responsible for his property and,
My children are not allowed to ride the ATV unless I'm home. Even if they ask my wife, she would tell them, no, not unless I'm home. So again, that would restrict, you know, my kids have to be home and I would have to be home if you're locked into 1 time slot. Also, question, why not maybe 1 ATV per half acre? You know, and maybe a limit on, you know, if you have more than 2 acres, the limit is 4 or something. And what about, like you said, more than just an hour time slot, maybe a 2 hour time slot?
I'll tell you what, Greg, we could debate this all night long, but the purpose was abuse. I don't really consider your daughter's abuse. You have no complaints. Nobody says, please stop this. But if you have somebody that says, please help us, they just ride all day long, 6 ATVs in the same yard at the same time. Please do something to help us. That's abuse. We're not after that. We want you to be able to use. The chances are very, very, very slim in my eyes that the police will ever get called about your daughter. But someone that is abusing it, running with a loud muffler all day long, that's abusing his neighbor's rights. There would be a call. We would have something to react with to protect that person's rights. That's all. We're not looking for use. We're looking for abuse. I think there's a lot of flexibility in this. It might not state it. It might state an hour, all right? But that's only if somebody's really complaining, right? If nobody complains,
Well,
No,
if
the
you
law's
do,
the law.
if you bring the law up where you have to call in when you're gonna use it, you would be,
well,
Yeah, but that's not what it says right now.
One of the things that we were looking for was a compromise in between. So there are people that are exact opposites that were on a committee that talked about this, and this, what came out was the result. That doesn't mean it's written in stone. All right, we can always adjust it, make things happen later. One gentleman said to me that when his son rides for a half hour, he's done.
Right.
Okay, so some people can ride for a half hour and be done, so an hour's not really limiting them. Maybe someday we're gonna have to make changes. Laws are not written in stone, even laws in the Supreme Court, they get challenged and changed. So we're just trying to come up with an answer to address abuse. And what is that answer? Is it this? I would say this is the best we've had so far, because when we started with this ordinance, it was a lot tougher. All right, and there would be no riding, period, unless you had a 1 acre lot or so forth, all right? But now we're trying to work with those people who have children like yourself, like Dave, where that is a privilege and a reward, and they have the right to enjoy that. So we're trying, that's all we're doing today.
Well, I guess all I can ask is that maybe the time slot be looked at, maybe tweaked a little bit, and the consideration of more than one ATV, maybe like I said, one per half acre.
1 per half acre is the way it is now, John, right?
No, it doesn't.
I believe it's
doesn't
one up
say
to 2
that.
acres.
Oh,
now.
yeah, it's up to an acre, or
Well,
Dave,
2
you
acres.
know
I
that.
think, yeah.
Yeah, 2.
Gotta have 2 acres.
See, there's a guy that knows all about that, so.
Gotta have 2 acres.
Yeah,
But-
part of the issue we had was, we had complaints with one vehicle being ridden in a yard, back and forth all day. How do we solve that issue? The person does not want to be a good neighbor, does not want to turn off the bike after a short time, they want to ride all day. How do you address that?
Well, like I said, it's a time slot, but 1 hour just doesn't seem enough.
We had initially, you weren't allowed to ride.
Right.
The 1 hour is a compromise from no riding. I think at one point we added a half an hour. Dave's son said after half an hour, he's had enough. You know, a lot of people that live in this area grew up in this area, and they used to ride their motorcycles or ATVs, and they want to do the same with their kids. Unfortunately, this city has grown exponentially over the past 20 years. There used to be one housing development down Crow. Now they're in every corner of the city. It's a lot more for us to police. And people with half acres, they want to ride their motorcycles, mopeds, all these ATVs around their yards. It's not built for that. And the neighbors complain. I'm not going to say we get 100 complaints a year on this. We get several, every 1 or 2 every month. How many people just put up with it? Now, your little things may not make that much noise, but what about somebody who has an off-road motorcycle going back and forth all day? How do you address that? And that's what this ordinance is looking at doing, is an hour a day should be more than enough to reward your kid that you've got an hour to ride. And I think that's where the mayor is saying, you still can reward your child, it's an hour. You just can't go all day like some people do.
Right. I don't disagree with a lot of what you said, but, again, if you have 2 or 3 kids, an hour, that's not a whole lot of time. As I said, my kids ride, they might ride on a weekend, on a Saturday, any given Saturday, it might be 2 or 3 hours, if they're taking turns riding, if they have a friend or so over. But they may do that once a month, if that.
Well,
So-
here's what we can do. Dave, you're always welcome to come and join the committee that is discussing this in my office. You can call my office and we can tell you about it. If it's up to council, do we want to move forward with this tonight? Or do we want to have more meetings and talk about time limits? Because when we talk time limits, we gotta listen to your side and also the other side, okay?
Right.
So instead of taking the time now, it's time for our council meeting to proceed. Do you want to proceed tonight, council, or should we have another meeting and come back? Because we have not listed whether this will get a reading or not.
I was gonna hold it at second reading for us
Right.
to digest, first of all, what's been said tonight. Second of all, this isn't very tight. There are some issues in here, as I brought up with the chief, of, it says get a permit. It doesn't say one per ATV, one per household. The 1 hour is it per, no matter, 2 ATVs, 1 ATV. So we do have some language that's not strong enough to be enforced. It has a little bit of room for interpretation, which you don't want to do when the police is called. So I was going to offer to remain at second reading till we have a chance to digest what was said tonight. We appreciate the fact, the video, the comments, and, you know, this is our opportunity to digest that more. Is there still tweaking that can be done? Yeah, always. You know, this isn't to punish people. This is really to find a way of a compromise when you have, I always bring up, I'd love to outlaw that you can't do your lawnmowers on Sunday. But I also know that's the only time sometimes my husband can cut the grass, even though I don't want him to cut the grass on Sunday. I want a day with no noise, but there's got to be a compromise here. So I appreciate it and would ask that, I've written notes down on this, that we take a look at it. Dave's leading this committee. Talk some more to Dave with your ideas. Thank you.
So let's do that. And the end result is, we're gonna have the best law, all right? Because other communities, bam, they've done that in many, many communities, no more, period. What we're gonna have is gonna be an example of the best law.
I don't really have an issue. I think Jane is right. There's some things that do need to be looked at in the language. However, I do think we need to come to a conclusion here fairly shortly. And I do think there have been a range of problems with this. I think we're not going to satisfy everyone, but I think we can compromise properly so that we're not punishing small children who want to be involved in enjoying a little vehicle, but we also can allow us to enforce reasonable behavior in this matter.
So thank you for all the comments tonight. I think now we're gonna have to ask for, to close this. Do I have a motion to adjourn this?
Motion to
Second.
adjourn.
Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? All right, do you want a 5-minute break, or should we get right into it? 5 minutes? 5 minutes, folks. We'll be right back.
Thank you.